Around 300,000 carbon dioxide monitors are to be made available to schools in England next term to help improve ventilation and lessen COVID outbreaks. Teaching unions have welcomed the pledge but added any ventilation problems need to be picked up by the monitors and then instantly acted upon. I'm joined by Sammie McFarland from Dorchester, who founded the Long COVID Kids Group after she and her daughter both became ill last March. Sammie, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
What have you learned from long COVID in children and how it can affect them, particularly related to this issue and these monitors?
Long COVID is a chronic disabling condition for children that have been infected with coronavirus. And unfortunately, these children that got ill in the first wave are still not getting better. So it's so important that we really prevent infection. And these CO2 monitors will help to do that because they're going to raise awareness of the need for ventilation. And I think that's hugely important.
Can I ask how you and your daughter are doing at the moment? Because there'll be people listening to this who will see long COVID in the news all the time, but will not quite know of its impact and what it involves.
So thank you for asking. My daughter was admitted to hospital by ambulance after blacking out on Thursday. This is a new symptom that we haven't seen before. She's had 2 episodes of this now in the last month. She's been ill for 18 months, and we just never know what's going to happen next. It's been horrific, quite honestly.
And forgive me for this, but I think this is what I'd be asking if I was in the car listening to you talking on the radio. As a mum, you tend to have a close eye on how your children are all the time anyway. This came directly off the back of COVID. It was easy to establish that COVID has started this, and whatever's going on, COVID is causing it.
Oh, yes, of course. So she was just being measured for her point shoes to dance. She'd just been working hard to get strong enough to dance on point with her ballet. She was extremely fit and able. She had no pre-existing conditions. She was a very outdoors active child. Every weekend we'd be on paddle boards or cycling or walking. She then had 8 months in bed after she got COVID, unable to walk, couldn't sit up, couldn't get to the toilet herself. Couldn't eat her own, couldn't eat food at a table because she wasn't strong enough to be able to hold her own body weight up. Her vision has deteriorated, and she had none of these problems before COVID. And she's not alone. There's 34,000 children in England alone suffering with long COVID, and these are conservative estimates. And we have 3,500 children in our group that we're observing, the feedback from their parents, and the other parents are saying the same thing as I am. So it's not a unique situation. And now she, has to pace herself. We have to do different protocols just to enable her to be able to walk and do normal things. She can't shower or bath alone now. We'll have to sit outside the door because we're not sure if she's going to black out, and you have to make sure she's not going to drown. These are not things I had to do before she got COVID infection.
It sounds horrific. When your daughter blacked out on Thursday to hospital, have you got used to the doctors being somewhat baffled, or is there progress being made as to what is actually happening with long COVID?
Sorry. No, I haven't got used to it. It still surprises me every single time that they are not better informed yet, and that they are still sceptical about the reality of long-lasting symptoms of infection. It's extremely disappointing. It's absolutely heart-wrenching to see your child be so ill and not be able to find someone that understands. I will say that we actually had a rapid access appointment yesterday from Dorchester Hospital, and the consultant that we saw there was brilliant. It's the first time that I've actually felt that our situation has been listened to. But yeah, they don't have answers. Even if you find someone sympathetic, there aren't any answers.
I can't imagine what that is like. You must be so desperate to see some resolution, and you're holding your nerve all the way through it. with someone that you obviously, adore and want the best for. I'm so sorry to hear that that's still going on and it's still so real. I think partly when we see long COVID in the news, there's a feeling that it starts, but then it peters out and it just becomes tiredness and exhaustion rather than these very immediate, very real symptoms.
Yes, I think there's definitely been more emphasis on the ME type symptoms that are reported in long COVID, and for many people, that is an overriding symptom that goes all the way through their long COVID experience. But for other people, they don't get that so much, and they have seizures or nerve pain, insomnia, muscle twitches, tics, vocal or motor tics, rashes. It can be so variable, and of course long COVID is a multi-systemic condition. It affects the ACE2 receptors, which are throughout the body, so therefore any part of the body can be affected.
Sammie, thank you for being on the radio today and being so honest about long COVID. And obviously we can see why you are so passionate about schools getting these monitors to keep airflow moving and to keep airflow being looked at to avoid any more children being impacted in the way your daughter has. So just a final word just before you go, Sammie. The government's putting 300,000 carbon dioxide monitors in schools. That's going to cost around £25 million. I'm assuming that comes with a thumbs up from you, and anything that we're doing to keep an eye on this situation is perceived as good.
We're very grateful that the government's heard our call for CO2 monitors. We've been campaigning since Long COVID Kids started for improved measures in schools. But it's great that this is happening, but it isn't enough, and it's a step forward, and it acknowledges that there's need. But really, we're looking to see how these monitors are used and what the next steps will be.
Sammie, thank you. That's Sammie McFarland from Dorchester, who founded the Long COVID Kids group. You can find them on social media.